point Ala having this K'Sante in the top lane just quite yet, because in their previous series up against top esports, this K'Sante pick was actually flexed to FoFo in the mid lane, so we will have to wait and see. But EDG and BLG now looking to secure something like the jungler, which is going to be Wukong available for EDG to take. But I mean, BLG, they're more than happy to lock in their ADC here, which is going to be their fearless, denying Lee from such a comfort pick. But I've already said this before, if they decide to go something like the Rakan and the Xayah, that is still going to be amazing 2v2 power. And on the other hand, it's going to be dependent on what On wants to pick. He can go for the scaling option, or he can link very well up with Xun and fight aggression with aggression.
See what he wants to kind of go for here. The Annie and the Aphelios locked in here. I like this as well. And I actually love the fact that the Maokai is kind of making its way through again. It seems to be a bit of a permaban in the LPL, but Jiejie getting himself onto that pick gives them a lot of kind of flexibility with this. The whole thing with putting the K'Sante mid is that you do feel like you do need a little bit of a kind of flex as such. You need something that can go into that magic damage, even if it's just a little bit, and it's exactly what you called. They're going to say, look, we're going to get the Gnar, so we're not even going to give Bin something that can kind of handily have an impact. You see a little smile or a little small kind of moment there for BLG as they look to try and want to go, think about what they want to go for. And it's a bit of a change here we're seeing from EDG. They're focusing in on getting their solo laners locked in way before their AD carry, and that's something that we have just not seen from many teams in this split.
In classic Bin fashion, he is going to lock in the Jax in that top lane, but for BLG so far, they're just going to ban out something like the Jinx and the Xayah that can be a potential answer to Elk's Aphelios in this game 1, which leaves me worrying because there's a lot of ADC bans coming into this game 1 and makes me wonder what Leave can play when it comes to the remaining pool. Never mind, it is going to be the Lucian, so it's going to either leave up the Xayah or that Jinx, which I think EDG, they do need something that has a lot of hyper carry potential, because you have 3 very great engaged sources in that top side, and it's going to all be about Leave in this game 1, and it's going to be his show.
Absolutely, and look, the Lucian banned away. I would be surprised to see the Jinx not get banned away here as well by BLG. Oh, actually, no, they're going to go with the Yuumi, so banning away that particular one there instead. But now let's see what they're going to go for. They're kind of forcing EDG into kind of picking the Jinx if you wanted to go for that particular handshake. See what EDG want to kind of ban away. The Viego makes it into my head as something they want to try and take away here from Xun. Has got a pretty decent pool of champions to kind of build from, so wouldn't be surprised to see him kind of, not feel the super kind of pressure to pick anything straight off the bat. But right now, EDG thinking about that last one. They're actually going to go for the Lulu. So again, both these teams kind of not opting towards double banning in one particular role, but rather taking an OP off of one role and then looking to try and get a support off the role as well.
It's pretty evident that BLG is going to deny this Xayah Rakan duo by locking in the Rakan themselves, but in EDG fashion, they might respond with just the Jinx and Nautilus that can kind of make up for that early aggression and the potential dive, depending on what Xun takes for this game 1. But I believe in a previous series, Xun more than happy to play something like the Kha'Zix that does have the carry potential in that jungle, especially Yagao playing something like the Annie that has great setup alongside On, so I wouldn't be too surprised there. And that pick in particular, when you get those early invades rolling and it starts kind of affecting how Jiejie is able to clear, then it really stops the scaling ability of EDG.
It really, really does. And all the way down to the last pick, we are going to see now BLG, see what they want to give Xun into that jungle. Did kind of take a lot of priority, but they can go for a hell of a lot more if they want to try and kind of, they kind of have their options available to them. I was just going to think, I would love to have something that can follow up with this Rakan. You've got the engage there with the Annie for the burst. The Sejuani fits into that absolutely perfectly. And as you just saw in your last series there with Munchables, the Sejuani packs a punch as well in those first few levels. You cannot take this champion lightly.
Yeah, most definitely. And Xun on something that can engage himself is, I think, the best quality of life for BLG to work off, because once you give someone like Xun and On and Yagao the ability to kind of continue with their own tempo in that early game, then that is the best way that they're going to find those early game skirmishes, especially when Leave is on the Jinx. This is going to be one of the 2 champions that he's played so far in the LPL, where it's the Aphelios on the other hand. So Jinx, she needs to have a lot of attention being put on her in these team fights, because it's going to be a Nautilus. And obviously we know that Nautilus, you're looking for those early game roams, you're looking for those ultimates onto the carries, but not really kind of looking at your own ADC in these team fights, especially when you're dealing something like the Rakan and the Annie that do have that engaged potential with the flash available.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And I mean, I think both teams are pretty happy with what they've gotten there. You can see with the way the champions have kind of worked, how these teams tend to, you know, kind of play. EDG, very safe and standard. They know that they got themselves an engage. They've got plenty of frontline tanks to kind of set up lead for success, like you mentioned. And for BLG, they've got a carry in the top lane. They've got Yagao on something that can facilitate either the Jax or the Aphelios. And like you mentioned, the Flash Recon gauge with the Sejuani can be absolutely devastating if they can get onto the Jinx. But the teams are locked and loaded. Kitty, we're going to be jumping in onto the Rift for game 1 of this best of 3. Both these teams looking to try and continue their fairly decent start to the season. Of course, it is a 2-0 start here for BLG. They're looking to maintain their undefeated streak well into the second week of this LPL summer split. And for EDG, they did drop a series so far, but it was against top esports, so we'll kind of give them a little bit of a pass considering the team they were going up against, but they don't want to make a habit of losing, and we'll see how these two teams play.
You know, Oisin, I think that has been the most even fan chants that I've heard so far in the LPL. Very loud from both EDG and BLG fans coming into this game 1. But something that I want to highlight is going to be about Ala and Bin, because Ala, he is out for revenge, especially with how the previous matchup went during that spring playoffs where Bin was really making Ala work for his money. But this time around, Bin picking the Jax into Gnar. I mean, he's going to have a very favorable matchup when it does come to the laning phase, and Ala, the execution for that spacing needs to be perfect because one, your wave control needs to be good just in case you get frozen on, and Shun does make his way towards that top side, and you're very easily caught out of position if you are that mini Gnar. So I'm wondering if Jiejie is going to work either towards this bottom side or help Ala out with that laning phase in the top.
See what he wants to kind of go for. Jiejie definitely kind of coming back into his 2021 Worlds winning form of in Spring Split. Definitely feeling like he was a much bigger threat than maybe he has been in a little bit of a while, especially in 2022. Wasn't the greatest of years for EDG. We will see a bit of trading in this bot side. It's pretty easy for the Nautilus to kind of, especially early on, to get that kind of information or to get that trade down in their favor. I like this little ward that's going to go down now in a second, so Jiejie will recognize that he has been spotted out. And heal does get used, but he gets caught out straight away. So you can see there, just already BLG's bot lane having to respect the all-in potential here from this Jinx and Nautilus, already burning a summoner.
Especially having that Glacial as well. I mean, Meiko landed 2 really nice hooks. That's going to be on once again as he gets chunked to half HP. But with both junglers starting in their bottom side, they are going to slowly work towards that top. So I think On needs to start slowing down the tempo that Meiko has been finding in this lane and kind of heal back with his Q. But we've seen these wards so far by BLG placed down, spotting out Jiejie starting his own red buff. So, I mean, Shun, he has been very proactive in terms of which direction he, or at least which lane he wants to play towards, so it's going to be really interesting to see if he's going to be able to counter gank what Jiejie is looking for.
You see on the couple of the percentages on the bottom there, 100% first blood percentage play there for Shun. He's definitely having himself a much kind of stronger start to these games. Sejuani fantastic, especially with the Annie to kind of help set you up as well, as they are going to find that ward and just clear that one out. Interesting enough, actually, we see the red smite coming out here from Jiejie. Something that we don't really see it often. It's usually blue or green, but definitely feeling a little bit more aggressive on this Maokai. Wants to try and really get some damage down with the poke of the saplings.
Most definitely, and we see Shun is going to recall and leave Bin and Ala in this isolated matchup, already giving a little bit of pressure towards this mini Gnar with this lane state being like this, which is going to be slow pushing towards this Jax. So I think Ala, he needs some help with fixing that very soon, but it is going to be a 3v3 perhaps in this bottom side. But we need to remember that On, he uses heal from that previous exchange, and Meiko, he took the ignite for this game 1, and that signifies that he is looking for early game aggression and he wants to shut down Elk on this Aphelios very soon.
Definitely feels like a place they can find a lot of success should they be able to catch anybody off guard. And this is the thing, yes, you have the cleanse on Elk and of course the flash, but I've seen it many, many times, especially with the Jinx and the Aphelios, is that you don't have that safety net. It can lead to a much harder, much more scarier kind of mid-game, especially with the cooldowns on some of your summoners being so high. So we'll see if anything does come of it. It just looks like it's just kind of pressure given over to the side of BLG, as they did have their jungler kind of rotate off first. But easily cleared there by EDG. Recall does not get finished by On, but it does get finished by Elk, and he gets himself a nice new pair of boots.
Nice new kicks at 5 minutes for the side of BLG, but I think when we talk about both of these compositions, they play similar roles because we have easy engage, or at least easy to execute engage from the junglers and mid laners of both these sides. But the biggest question is about how these ADCs really show up to these team fights, because we've seen the Fearless versus Jinx matchup multiple times. However, the only difference is also going to be about how Bin can scale into this game as that side lane pressure on this Jax and really show up, potentially even going the whole breaker just to be an extra bit of nuisance for EDG to deal with while they look for 5v5s in the mid to late game.
Yeah, we saw just showing himself on top side. They maybe were looking for a dive just before Allah hits himself onto level 6. He was in mini as well, but not to be for the moment. Allah able to keep that wave nice and push. Actually quite like what we saw from Meiko there. He roamed in, dropped a minion dematerializer into the mid lane just to help out FoFo with the push and kind of say, look, we got the pressure. That little thing can lead to, Yagao just kind of saying, like, he needs to be a little bit more careful. We will see a full-on engage coming out here. There's the traps, a little bit late there from Leave, but no harm, no foul for the moment. He's just trying to make sure he keeps himself nice and healthy in his bot side. Actually rushing the recurve bow in this lane to try and go for it, not going for the Berserker Greaves, which is, a little strange. So that we generally see the kind of, the rush into the boots, but not feeling too pressured by it for the moment.
And it is going to be a very slow start for both EDG and BLG in this game one, as both of these junglers are just waiting for that level 6 spike, and then they can start looking for successful ganks towards their laners. But I think with flashes all available, especially cleanses also still on for these ADCs, it's going to be more than just one attempt to find something successful for both of these sides. But I think on this Rakan, I mean, that is one of his most iconic champions. It is also a very big reason why they're able to make it to the playoffs. I think when you give him something like the Blitzcrank or the Rakan, where he's the first initial engage, he just has a very good vision of when to fight and how to fight, where it really enables Elk to start DPSing front to back.
And look, we know what the way the game goes. 7 minutes into the game, need level 6s. That's literally it. The game has gotten to a point now where you just need level 6s before you can actually start to look for something anyway aggressive. As I say that, we have cast a curse a little bit, but yeah, it's a Rakan. He's got the battle dance. He's going to be able to get himself to out. But I do like that you bring up On, because On has kind of been that carry, I suppose, that has been very questioned, I suppose, kind of coming out of this one here, but its engages has been absolutely spot on. I say that right as he gets himself caught out. Questionable moving forward. The Ignite does get dropped here by Meiko. Not going to lead into any kind of kill, but that's a significant chunk of health now taken off of him. As I was just about to sing his praises, he ends up giving up a little bit too much pressure in that bot side.
We do see the jungle and support of BLG now resetting due to how poorly that trade went on to On. So Jiejie looking to regain that vision control for this first dragon. But something that I wanted to highlight is that EDG, one of the best teams when it comes to late game team fighting, also one of the teams that has the slowest tempo when it comes to the early game. So they're very happy with how the current game state is. While on the other hand, BLG, I mean, we've only seen chaos from them at the very start of summer, and this is going to be a very different approach for BLG in seeing if they're going to be able to adapt to this type of playstyle for this first dragon.
Well, dragon down to 2000 HP. Looks like it's going to be secured. There's going to be the ultimate from the Maokai, the Moonlight Vigil, to try and get on the backside of this one here. On trying to make sure he can be a bit more of a nuisance. Huge damage in. As you can see, Elk just moving forward with the red and white. He is ready to fight. Finally gets taken down there by FoFo, who does not land the CC. But look, it was all to try and just delay the inevitable. 3 for 1 in favor of BLG. The dragon to EDG, but the kills and the gold to BLG.
A lot of flashes burned from both sides, but like you said, the first dragon being secured by EDG, but what do you really get in response? Well, Elk picked up the double kill, and also Leave going to miss out on a wave or two in that bottom side, but it does seem like EDG being the ones to initiate this dragon fight and On tanking the Maokai ultimate as well as Elk. He was the one being the flanker onto Leave, and having red and white, I mean, you see this Jinx struggling to DPS or at least find an angle, being sandwiched by the carries of BLG, and of course Yagao landing a very nice double man Tibbers on this Annie, made up for that fight and made it really go into BLG's favor. But a really good start for the side of BLG, where they're going to lane swap and secure this Rift Herald, where I wouldn't be surprised if they just drop a top lane and let Elk get 5 plates.
I mean, Now have the quickness available for On, but he's not going to go for it just yet. Shun is in the area, and with the Rift Herald making that cry around the map, you do know that it has been taken, and definitely something to be very aware of. The funny thing is about that last fight is Yagao didn't even use his flash to try and get into that engage. He just kind of walked up and knew that he was able to get it. Yeah, just walked up and ulted, dropped it down as quick as he possibly could. Now Shun doing exactly as you called out. Kitty going to be dropping down this Rift Herald to keep Elk pushing forward. He's already gotten 2 kills, get him more and more gold. Definitely feels good here for the side of BLG.
This is at least 4 plates going into Elk's hand. As you see, the bottom lane of EDG rotating a little bit slow towards his lane swap. And that's exactly what BLG is looking for, getting gold online early compared to someone like the Jinx that is currently sitting on 0-1 and working towards that Kraken Slayer. But we'll have to wait and see because EDG, I mean, it is pretty expected, or at least expected of this team to drop the ball early game, but when they shine, it is towards that late game team fight. So I'm hoping that this first kind of dragon fight not going in the favors of EDG isn't going to make them stumble a little bit too much in terms of how they play the rest of the macro.
That's the big thing. I love that we kind of bring it back as well. EDG, a very slow, methodical, team fight-based team that like to kind of have all their ducks in a row before they shoot them in the barrel. But it does feel like BLG are kind of a natural counter to them in that sense as well, because like BLG love the scrap. They love for things to get, weird and wild just so they can kind of, find those opportunities. Your timings on your flashes are off. You're not really feeling as confident moving forward. And these little differences can make it. Yeah, I mean, On was just, they didn't know where anyone else was, and the demonic embrace, Jiejie just wasn't feeling confident, but all out into the mid lane. Tibbers gets dropped down to try and trade back a bit of the health bar, but here comes On with the quickness, but it was more just to dissuade anything other than that. On not having as good of a time going for that one here, and now Bin jumping onto the mini Nara of Ala, going to be able to trade back very, very effectively.
And that's where we go back to the point where Alan needs to play with his spacing perfectly on this mini Nara. He's just going to get out-traded by that grasp on Jax. But we also have to talk about how that mid lane went, because something that I want to praise Annie players is that something that they don't do enough, but I praise when I see it, is they just dropped the ultimate. A really good W from On, bringing Jiejie over the wall.
Yeah, bringing him over the wall. They're going to flash in and try and make this one happen, but a 1v1 between the AD carries. It's Gale Force versus Kraken Slayer, and the Gale Force wins. That's going to be the Jinx going down. Jiejie next to follow. Bin's TP'd in. On survives. I don't know how. Yagao just stacking up stuns, and EDG, they just got nowhere to go. BLG, they came to play today.
BLG initiating that with just how On was able to bring Jiejie over the wall. A tree in a very awkward position, forced to flash out, and of course leaving Leave by himself in that bottom side. Just got 1v1'd by Elk. And this game, I mean, the tempo is fastened so much that I don't know if EDG can keep up.
That's it. They're kind of keeping them so unbelievably dizzy that because of the amount of plays that are happening around the map. And it's little things like that. This is what I was trying to make about, kind of BLG earlier on, is that BLG have gotten better every single time. That play only really happens because On, as we can see it here, gets himself over the wall. We're even going to see Elk's POV as he goes for a little bit of a 1v1. But, I mean, those little differences are what going to get you such huge advantages in these games.
Yeah, Leaf just got caught completely out of his own element with that Gale Force Gravitum out of Elk. But we'll have another look at this beautiful Rakan W that forces the flash out of EDG's jungler. And of course, Bin with that TP, picking up 2 kills from this fight is going to make Ala's time so much more hard in terms of the isolated match when it does come to the Gnar and Jax. And poor little Meiko, being the only survivor of this skirmish, is also going to eventually fall, and that is 2-0 Jax that you have to deal with on the side lanes now. But this is going to be the next skirmish. EDG not looking to bow down just quite yet.
So I was talking about, though, you got to have that breakneck speed, and no TP on Bin means that BLG are kind of maybe happy to let this one go. Shun and On are posturing, but I don't really think it's anything other than that. And I will say, Bin bringing out our first Triforce Jax of the split here in the LPL. Definitely looking to try and abuse that on 13-11 when we do change over to it, but being an early adopter for the moment. And honestly, I absolutely love it, because you can see just how aggressive he's being and how much he's gaining from it as well. He's absolutely, again, similar to the time we saw it in the playoffs of spring, just kind of having much more impact than Alpha.
Yeah, most definitely. And someone else that is also having a huge impact on the early game, or at least this these skirmishes, is Shun on the Sejuani. 5 assists compared to Jiejie on this Maokai. Really struggling to get anything done, or at least lock anyone down with that Maokai ultimate. And I just think Shun has had such a wonderful transformation ever since he's gotten his first international experience alongside On. But of course, now we saw that stat from earlier that BLG, they have a 59% chance of getting that first tower array, and that is just when Elk is on something like the Jinx and the Aphelios. It's like clockwork, where they will get the Rift Herald and they will just always plant it down for Elk and get 5 plates into his pockets, where he is now so ahead of the Jinx.
I mean, yeah, just feeling so hard for EDG to really kind of go for this. I will say they're in a 2 dragon spots. They are feeling better about that. Meiko kind of has to lose his flash here, and honestly might still lose his life, because where's he going to go? He's not really got much else to do. It's going to force more ultimates. He's just survived for the moment, but do you really want this fight? That is the question here, because I was just going to say the Annie's got the burst, and he survived, and then he said, no, I shall not live this engage, and goes right back in. They lose a tower, they lose a kill. EDG, I mean, it's just looking like they just can't keep up with the pace.
Yeah, and you see that Jiejie, he's offering not a lot of damage when it comes to these 3v3 skirmishes. As Meiko, he thought he could turn after the boy showed up, but no, BLG, they take this mid-tier 1 tower as well and open up for all the vision, as it is going to be extremely tough if Maokai can't play around those bushes, especially with the demonic and going full AP. Not having those empowered saplings is going to be a very big problem, acting as the solo AP for EDG in this game 1.
Solo AP, and like I said, he's going full AP. He got that lost chapter in his inventory as well. So this is definitely not a move. We do see the demonic every now and again. It's kind of like a good first item, but oh, Meiko, buddy, pal. Oh, he's just getting bullied right now, but it's a 2v3. Do they able to kill him off? That is the question. On dies first, and now they've traded it all back. TP comes in from FoFo. Now Bin in a 2v3 with his jungler, trying to see if he can make this one work. The all-out comes out, but Bin is still looking very tanky. Finally, the Jinx can come in, and Cassante gets the kill. BLG having a little bit too much fun with that particular engage, and they get punished for it. They lose the tower bot side, and they lose themselves 2 kills.
Definitely see a common trend with BLG in having a little bit too much fun when it comes to gaining this early lead, and you often see it from Bin, where he is just... He was 3-0, and then obviously giving that shutdown over to FoFo, not the most ideal, as Yagao TP'd a little bit too late to the play, but I'm sure BLG is still in a very comfortable position. Having both tier 1 towers in mid and bottom lane is going to allow On to place down that vision control prior before this upcoming soul point for EDG, but we'll see how this play played out, because Meiko, he was the one walking into Bin, and it really did seem like this Nautilus was going to get one shot, but no, there just wasn't enough damage, whereas Meiko was able to live for a little bit longer, and Bin, he had to kind of commit to this kill, while a surprising amount of damage on this Nar, one shot On as well, but just a numbers advantage from the side of EDG, and they were able to pick up 2 scrappy kills, but none of them went into Lee's pockets, which is a little bit concerning because this Jinx is kind of starving.
Yeah, she really would love to get a kill or something just to get her going on it, but now EDG with extra influx and gold. FoFo feeling very confident to kind of walk forward and be a bit more aggressive into Bin. Bin recognizing, okay, I'm not quite there with my my 1v5 build, but we will eventually have it unless they can keep putting him into the shadow realm here, into the gray screen. Bin gonna walk forward, gets a hook. There's a defamation smash. They'll see if they can maybe jump on top of him. He does get hit there by the Nature's Grasp and the ultimate. They're just knocking him back. Welcome to the bounce house. Oh my lord, Bin didn't give an opportunity to try and walk away from that. The CC was just insane.
Bin, look at the vision control that On has placed in the bottom side. No one showed on those wards, so where else could they be? They're obviously camping you on the top side, but Bin falling down, also giving that tier 1 top lane to EDG. They're slowly scrapping their way back into this game, but Lee being a lonely ADC, only sitting on that Kraken Slayer compared to Elk, who's finished his LDR. So this, I feel, is really going to hurt if EDG do want to challenge this upcoming dragon, which is unlikely as they have no vision whatsoever in this bottom side.
That's the thing. There is a, one action, each action has an equal and opposite reaction. EDG top loaded. They tried to make sure they got a thing. They got it. They got their kill. They got some extra gold, but it does mean they left mid exposed. It does mean they left this dragon exposed, and it means that they now haven't got the soul point, and they have to wait for 5 more minutes before that can come out. It's still only about a 3,000 gold lead. It's nothing that cannot be assailed here by EDG. BLG need to be making sure they do end up kind of dotting their I's and crossing their T's before they really think that this game is, you know, home and dry.
Something that I also want to highlight, which I also mentioned earlier, is that Bin has decided to go for the Hull Breaker in that second item slot. So EDG, it is very evident to see that they have to kind of respond to this Jax on the side lane, utilizing 3 people at least to have enough damage to finish off this Jax, which we saw in the previous skirmish. But I feel like BLG is still in a very comfortable position with how they've been scaling, and if Jax does rotate towards the bottom side, they can start putting pressure towards this Baron.
Can put pressure on it. Shirley gets dropped, and we'll see if they get much else out of this other than the tower. And this is the thing, is that BLG are coming out with tier 2s over the tier 1s of EDG. There's going to be the Glacial Prison thrown out, not really landing onto Meiko as the Maokai ultimate is used in response. As Leandri's Torment at the moment here picked up for Jiejie, so he will start to hurt quite a bit, and I think that is very much in response to the fact that he does have a Cassante in that mid lane who is going full tank. Gargoyle's Stone Plate finished up for him. BLG still making the faster macro moves around the map, but because they had the Rift Herald, they're able to take that turret without too much of a fight. And with Hullbreaker here on Bin, that's where I'm going to kind of see where BLG going to want to put their resources. If they're happy to kind of move forward with this split push, or if they want to try and, you know, maybe look for a little bit of a flank with the Jax.
Yeah, and you see BLG now switching over the side where they're now working towards this Baron and sustaining their vision control that they've been able to kind of create in the past few minutes. But there is a very sneaky ward right outside the pit where it does avoid that pink ward that On just played. So EDG, they will know whenever BLG is starting this Baron. Elk doesn't have the correct guns just quite yet, so they are trying to kind of bait the idea of Baron, as Bin is creating pressure with this Hullbreaker Jax in the side lane. Ala isn't going to win that in an isolated matchup, so EDG, they're put in a pretty tough position to think if they want to force this 5v5, but I think BLG, they have enough disengage to stop that from happening.
Plenty of disengage, you have plenty of resources, 2.5 items on your fellows, but an Infinity Edge finish up for Leave. Leave with the Kraken Slayer and the Infinity Edge is an exceptionally powerful tool, and we haven't actually really seen him get involved in any of the fights in the last few minutes or so. Even the scrappy ones, he's been very much just farming up and keeping himself actually ahead. Funny enough, this is spotted. They now know it's been spotted. Yeah, you can see straight away BLG kind of say, look, we can't go for it. It would have been nice if it was sneaky, but definitely not if we're being caught out like this. So back themselves away. I like this kind of tempered aggression coming out from BLG. Just testing the waters a little bit, seeing where and when they can maybe catch EDG out. Like right now.
Yeah, it really does seem like EDG is just praying for the idea that Leave hits 3 items soon from just CSing in mid lane, and then they force a 5v5. But BLG now putting this extra pressure onto the Baron, where Bin, he is eventually going to get this push in. I don't think there's going to be a solo kill happening anytime soon, but still, with BLG having that vision placed down, they are under no pressure whatsoever. So EDG, with this kind of chance, they might flip the Baron or at least get some of the vision.
The crazy thing is about that last Baron play where they kind of just stopped, EDG weren't really posturing to stop them. I feel like BLG had just hard committed with the Annie and the Sejuani, and then, you know, kept her on off of the side to play keep away. They possibly could have actually just straight up gotten that Baron. There wasn't really much of a contest coming out there from EDG, so shoulda, woulda, coulda is always the questions that come out when these particular games happen, but wasn't to be for the moment. And actually, interesting enough, despite Bin getting those 2 kills, he's actually about 30 CS behind in this lane against Ala, who's been able to kind of equal him out and get ahead in terms of the standards, you know, kind of setup right now. It's a little bit of a lead in terms of the items completed here for the BLG top laner, but for the moment, this is still a very, very even game. Not too much to discern between these 2 absolute titans of this series.
Yeah, and you see On now taking notice that Meiko has been putting down those sneaky wards outside of the pit. He is going to clear that without any problem whatsoever, as the Dragon Soul, not Dragon Soul, but the second dragon for BLG is going to be spawning very soon. Yagao does take notice of this and plays extremely carefully on the side lane. But I think it's all going to be up to that one explosive team fight in the mid lane. A 5v5 ARAM, very EDG style, where Leave now working towards that third item with that passive can eventually become something great for EDG, but it's still a very slow game for them to kind of play out.
Very, very slow game. It kind of went a bit scrappy, a bit fast-paced, but it is. BLG coming out with the Dragon, and they're the ones that are having a little bit of an easier time of just pinning EDG back. And that's the big thing that I'm noticing so far in this game, is that it's all about BLG just pushing EDG back. EDG not willing to kind of go for anything they're not 100% sure of. They may be 100% sure of this, as Elk, with the Gale Force, going to be able to get himself away from that particular CC.
Look at
he
Yagao.
is just fine, so yeah, there's going to be a big old TP. It's a double TP. They're going to have Yagao on the flank. Goes in, flashes a cleanse, though, from Leave. Means that he is just fine, but can they really defend this point? That is the question. The answer is looking like no, as the Gnar and the Maokai have both fallen down. A double counter-strike in means that Meiko will be falling alongside the Cassante, and it's a 4-0. BLG, they found one opportunity, and they did not waste it to take out a clean 5-0 ace. So I'm going to say that Leave is keeping himself alive for a second, but a smack from the Rakan, and BLG looking to take game one.
Oisin, I think that's it. I think the ARAM in the
Could
mid lane,
be.
the 5v5 force from EDG. This is going to be game one going over towards BLG. A wonderful flank coming out of both Bin and Yagao, where they're able to get their hands onto the carries of EDG, and now 25 minutes, they take this game with ease.
They do indeed. That is game one of this best of three. And BLG, they had the early game, and then when everything kind of slowed down, you could see that it was EDG looking a little bit comfortable, but never looking proactive. I think that's the big difference between them, is that they had one or two small like overloads on the side lane, but it never really led to anything substantial. It was always answered back by BLG, and then one opportunity, one moment given over to the side of BLG, and EDG just couldn't hold the dam any further, and it crumbled to pieces.
Yeah, and I think just committing 3 people towards that top side to kill Bin and trading off your mid 2 towers really kind of restricted the way that Meiko and Jiejie was able to play around the map. You saw no vision whatsoever from this Nautilus, because it's just so hard trying to walk up to someone like the Sejuani and Rakan, where we saw that Meiko, he's done that multiple times on the verge of death pretty much every single attempt.
Yeah.
But yeah, a really good early game from the side of BLG, where they traded that first dragon for 2 kills into the pockets of Elk, and we saw the consistent pressure that this Aphiles had compared to someone like the Jinx, where EDG, they were hoping that this Jinx just slowly got to that third item spike and then they flip for a 5v5. But at that point, Yagao just found the perfect opportunity to get his hands onto this ADC and shut him down completely.
Yeah, and again, like the thing is that does he burst him out immediately? No, Leave is the last one to die in that last team fight, but it means that the ADC is constantly retreating, constantly burning summoners and resources to protect themselves. And when your ADC is not doing damage, your ADC is not winning the game. That is just how it is, unfortunately, in the LPL right now, or even in professional League of Legends. But it was just such a great game to watch from BLG. It really does feel like this team is going from strength to strength to strength, which old matchups, which would have been so close, they would have maybe scraped by them right to the depth of the, kind of 45-minute games, are now turning into 25, 27-minute wins. This is not really looking like a team that kind of can be underestimated anymore. And I really do feel like the longer we go into this season, the more BLG are kind of proving to everyone, no, they're the real deal.
Yeah, BLG having a very different approach compared to the remaining teams in the LPL. Early aggression is their game, and they've been able to execute it every single time. Even in their one game loss, which was up against RA, they had the early game lead, but eventually that lead got thrown due to a little bit of trolling, which we've seen BLG do a little bit, especially also in this game 1. But looking at the damage dealt to champions, Yagao did so much damage on this Annie. I believe he had the Haunting guys, not the Haunting guys, oh my god, my age, Leandries on the Annie, and then working towards, I believe it was a Rabbit on second, but he was just able to have so much CC and damage in these teamfights, where FoFo, I mean, yes, you're playing the Cassante, where you do get that early game lead, where you don't stand any threat against someone like this Annie and Sejuani combo, but still, the voice of this mid-jungle duo coming to this game 1 from the side of BLG was so evident, where you see the Sejuani is now sitting on a 0-0-11 scoreline, because Shun is just that jungle. He's that guy.
I mean, he had to be 26 minutes in. And again, 0-0 and 11. Perfect setup for the jungler of BLG. And I love that you brought up Yagao. I think Yagao saw his role in this game exceptionally well. He said, it's cool, there is literally no healing or shielding available for this Jinx. If I just drop everything down on top of her, even if she doesn't die, she's definitely not going to be part of the fight. And we saw it multiple times that he was just dropping down the tibbers, the combo coming out, and getting, so much damage out that all, Jiejie going the full AP route, you just couldn't stand up for this. And Meiko, sadly, not really kind of getting to a point where the Nautilus could be tanky and be a frontliner alongside the Cassante. So for me, BLG just played this so well. They knew how they wanted to draft, and they kind of got everything going for them so early that EDG just never had an opportunity to bounce back.
Yeah, most definitely. And something else that does not get mentioned enough is I think BLG have one of the best vision control when it does come to those major objectives. We saw that I mean, when he is getting that early game lead, he doesn't just get kills into his carry's pockets. No, he extends that to getting deep vision wars where it does spot out Jiejie. And especially with the first wall, you already see that BLG, they're just tracking this Maokai wherever he goes. And when he does attempt to try for something in that top side, Shun is there to counter. So BLG, a lot of proactiveness, and they know what to do when they do have this early game lead, where I think they are one of the best teams when it comes to the snowballing game in the LPL.
They really are. I really do believe that it's kind of one of those things now that you will have to stop BLG from getting those advantages, or you're just going to be in such a hole. But